I often find myself thinking about the amount of knowledge that is both recorded and lost throughout time. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria, the slow pruning of books from my local library as more are introduced, the devoted historians piecing together every last bit of a person's history by carefully combing through records of births and deaths, the photo albums and knickknacks my grandparents' drawers have, the countless vinyl records and CDs and archives all over the world, my great grandmother's piano, so lovingly dusted and tuned in the living room. And how much knowledge, how many pictures and paintings, how many diaries of everyday things are lost to the infinite stretch of time. This is not to be some sad or melancholic rant about the passing of time or the inevitability of our own existence bereft of meaning, but rather an examination of what we choose to keep and what we choose to throw away. Jacob Geller put out a video about this idea titled, "How Can We Bear to Throw Anything Away?" and it made me think back to when I was growing up. He talked a lot about different things on the internet being lost to time forever. But thinking back, there's another loss. I was a weird kid, almost completely alone for so much of my childhood except for close family and some of my parents' coworkers or clients. And my parents wanted me to be smart, be able to get through school, get a good job, be successful. That started with teaching me how to read very early. I'd started reading well before most of my peers and was reading at 12th grade level in grade 4. I loved books, all kinds. I'd pore over the Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen. I read so many of the Warrior Cat series, it's actually a little insane. I poked through old unused textbooks from thrift stores and yard sales. I sneered at the endlessly inadequate encyclopedias as I searched for things that hadn't even existed when they were printed. I pawed through video game guides my cousins left behind, even though I had no games of my own. I flipped through old textbooks for classes I'd never taken, notes from a first aid class I'd taken as an accessory to a lifeguard certification class years prior. And I wrote. I wrote everything, anything I could get my hands on, even if it didn't make sense. I still do this, rescuing old tattered books from closing schools and libraries, giving away old copies, little articles from sites online that only 5 other people have visited, from blogs long out of date on the last pages of Google, machine diagrams and sketches of gears and the process of their creation, stories I'd recorded from dozens of people I'd met, friends, hitchhikers, teachers, family, neighbors, tidbits about their lives and families long past, and their recipes and sewing projects and jobs. Years of study on anatomy and psychology, even more in the arts and history. Plays and songs, oil painting techniques I'd read about and experimented with, countless science projects and notes on math formulas I found particularly elegant. Even my own novellas and what now amounts to over 1,000 poems. But none of it matters. Even if it contains enough information to fill a small manor house wall to wall with bookshelves. When I was a teenager, nearing the end of high school, I carefully laid each of my notebooks and collection into cardboard boxes, old bags, countless words that would take my whole life to read over if I tried. And here I admit it, I call myself a murderer for this. This collection so wonderfully colorful, vast, perfect, containing memories from people and places now lost forever to time. It's gone. All of it. Over the course of a very long, cold day in the late fall in the southern United States, my neighbor was burning a mountain of fallen logs from a previous tornado, cut grass from the fields, and wood from some random construction project, papers, broken wooden toys, all that stuff. And I added my books, without my parents or the neighbor knowing any of them. I doubt my parents even realized half of those books existed at the time because I was great at squirreling them away. But there they were on the fire, papers crisping like leaves turned to ash, the leather on my books smoking and charred, threads from the binding, nothing. With that fire that just kept burning for hours and hours. They'd started the fire in the morning, early, while there was still dew on the grass, and it burned until sunset. And I kept adding. This is the single greatest regret of my life. And I've not had an easy or perfectly innocent life, but at the time it was the only real option I saw to move forward. After all, surely no one would ever read these things, and everything I'd ever written about was knowledge I'd gotten somewhere else, from another life that was not my own. Only now in my mid-20s looking back at the child that hoarded and collected, that worshipped learning everything that made up the world I so desperately wanted to be a part of, do I see what a horrible thing I did burning those books and papers. It's memories that will never be recovered from people who are long gone. It's old thoughts and theories that are lost because nobody ever bothered to keep them. Occasionally, when searching in an old closet or childhood room, I come across something precious that escaped that purge. What is left is scattered and raw, a book in French on classical Greek art and architecture with the pages yellowing and cover warping, an old copy of Descartes with notes of Wicca in the margins, because it was the only book I could get my hands on and I needed to write down this note now. A map of another state that I visited once, with notes on what I saw there scribbled all over it. Names of friends and their parents and their history all hastily recorded on a notepad stuffed in an unused, torn open backpack that I haven't touched since school. These items are trash, useless bits of ephemera, but they're precious to me, endlessly precious. They're the ashes left over from the Library of Alexandria that I created, and I love them. Hopefully you take this video as it's intended. I'm not saying hoard everything, because what if you regret throwing it away later? I'm saying to never get rid of something precious to you just because another version already exists elsewhere. The art prints in my drawers and on my walls are no less precious for existing somewhere else in the world, and my poetry books will never stop exciting my mind just because I could find scattered pieces of them on the internet. I came to this just to get it out of my head. My pain comes not from the loss of knowledge itself, but because I burned something I loved more than anything else in the world. Because it was my world, infinite. The memories written down would never die, and those snapshots of life would never be forgotten. I now keep pages and pages of information and art on hard drives and computer documents, sorted and compiled so I can look at them whenever, but the longing for my pages still exists. So I also keep notebook after notebook, nothing too precious to fill with words or drawings, nothing precious enough to sell or donate, just things that I love. Maybe this story means nothing to you, but maybe it'll help one of you who's struggling with the question that caused me to burn my books, my treasures. The question, who other than me would ever read this? The anthropologist in my heart weeps at the question. There are places I used to get information from for little everyday things that no longer exist. There are forums and sites and blogs that fascinated me for years whose servers no longer run and who cannot be found anymore. So next time you're looking through an old notebook or diary you filled with random scribbles and drawings of things you love and memories you barely remember, consider the weight of the life in that book. And never lose your love for that.